people have been fighting for 400 years.
And your people too.
So I just want you to explain what you mean by that.
You know what I'm talking about. Y'all all know what I'm talking about, man. Don't sit up here and try to bait and not know what I'm talking about. Y'all know what the fuck I talk about when I say these things. Your people too.
Explain it. Not everybody knows what you're talking about.
Radio Raheem, I don't have to explain what's understood, man. You know what I mean by that. You know what I say about that. I ain't gotta go further. And if anybody don't understand that, then God be with them. Go look up the history. Go look up the history. Shit, don't everybody believe in Google? Go Google that shit. See what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about, man. You know what I dare you to sit up there and say, explain. You know what I'm talking about, man. It's fighting people. You know we've been fighting 400 and still fighting to this day. To this day. To this day.
Welcome back. Welcome back. All right, this is John B. with the second edition of my Black Aboriginal American conspiracy theory debunking. All right, recapping on my last video. My last video actually went over the 98% African Americans are not African, but in fact Native American from Dane, Calloway. All right, which is a false statement, totally blasphemous to say that. But a lot of Aboriginals actually believe that. On that video, I received a lot of comments with the Aboriginals. Most of them, the comments were actually started off of them not believing in DNA. Okay, so what I found out is most Aboriginals don't believe in DNA. But when I asked them about documentation, can you give me any hard documentation stating that your family was always here, like a census record, tribal record, and what it is say on your ethnicity? None of them give me anything. Why is that? Because they didn't have anything. This is a conspiracy, obviously. But moving forward, this photo right here is a photo of my second great grandfather, John Stewart. All right. John Stewart was born around the 1870s in Arkansas during the Reconstruction in the South. He had two wives, and he ended up having 22 children, two of which are still living today. So we have a huge family on my Stewart line. All right. The Stewarts actually moved from South Carolina to Arkansas, and doing research on his line, 2 generations back, we actually have ancestors that came from Africa. All right. What I'm getting at is I watched a video of A1 recently. He did research on his family, but what he said is on his family were listed as colored, Negro, and black, and he can get back to the 1820, and that right there made him indigenous to America because they were listed as colored or Negro. All right. Well, on the census records that I found, I have ancestors that listed colored, Negro, black, but not only do they list that as their ethnicity, but they actually have place of birth, Africa. All right. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to provide documentation with the statements that I'm saying. All right. Moving forward.
My answer, I already went back as far as I need to go. I went back to 1820. That's as far as I need to go back. I don't need to go back. That's only on my mom's side. My father's side, I went back to about like 1850. And I ain't even need to go back no further. That proves to me that they was Indians. Because then all of their birth certificates, my grandmother got fucking color. My other grandmother had color. My father got color. My other grandmother had color. So I don't need to know. I already know. The Negroes the Indians was classified as colored. That's it. Anybody who was here pre 1965 before the Hart-Celler Act, understand this, y'all. Anybody who was here prior to the Hart-Stella Act, who was non-physical, who didn't carry the physical or the physiognomy of an Asian, is just straight, plain, and common fucking sense, man. Prior to 1865, there was, like I said, there was Indian and Chinese classifications, but for the most part, it was only white and black, and that was or no, I'm gonna say white and colored, because at first it was white and colored. They never really called you black. The only thing you will find on your birth certificate would either be colored or Negro. That's it. You would never see black because they never really identified you as black. They called you black black is a term that's worse than being a Negro. We don't even observe that or understand that. We don't. That's what they call you black, because it's Simbatin Montoos, and this is what you were at first. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, you had no rights. You had no rights. That take you back to the.
So I'm back again with Dane Calloway. All right, so this one I'm gonna go over Dane Calloway's comments on the 98% of African Americans not being African, but in fact indigenous to America or native Aboriginal. He's just saying whatever to not be African, basically. All right, let's go ahead and debunk that right now. All right, next clip. As so let's see how accurate A1's statement was. All right, so what the census calls us history timeline. All right, well on the right side you'll notice the present or last census record and how they labeled us. You notice at the top it has white. The second choice is black, African American, or Negro. The third choice they have is some other race. And lastly, they have American Indian, or Alaskan Native. All right. So, you notice on the left it has free white males or free females, white females. Also, it has free colored males or free colored females. And then it also has slaves. Those are the listifications for black, African American, or Negro in the 1820 census. All right, moving forward, 1850 census. All right, white is white. Black is now listed as black. This is for a person that is a free person of color. They're listed as black in 1850. All right, and all right, the next choice they have is a new choice. It's mulatto, so that's biracial person. Is a mulatto. Uh, the next choice would be black slaves or mulatto slaves, and then the same on 2010. All right, so moving forward again. Now in 1860 census, um, everything looks the same, with the exception of the addition of Indian. All right. Again, you gotta listen to what he said. Uh, he didn't mention once that his listifications was actually Indian. All right. And 1860 is the first year of classification as Indian in our census, unless you have tribal records, because tribes they had their own census, and in this case, he didn't mention it at all. So nowhere to be seen of Aboriginal American history. All right. Moving forward to 1890, everything's the same with the exception of quadroon and octoroon, which is 1/4 and 1/8. All right. In 1900, everything looks almost identical to today, with the exception of some other races. All right. Moving forward again, in 1940, everything's the same, with the exception of black being preferred as Negro in 1940. All right. So I don't know how anyone could come up with um, being an American Aboriginal with their ancestors as race classification as black, as Negro, or African American, or free person of color. There's no way you can be classified as Aboriginal American. I don't know how he gets this. He said he didn't have to do any further research. As I explained before, the only way you're able to receive Indian on the census is has to be 1860 or newer. Before that, it wasn't listed. You would have to actually have a tribal documentations putting you back into a tribe, which he doesn't. All right, that's the debunk. So I'm back again with Dane Calloway. All right, so this one I'm gonna go over Dane Calloway's comments on the 98% of African Americans not being African, but in fact indigenous to America or native Aboriginal. He's just saying whatever to not be African, basically. All right, let's go ahead and debunk that right now. All right, next clip.
Blacks from the Americas back to Europe. Here's the question: if Christopher Columbus never set foot on the United States, well, what type of blacks did he take back to Europe? I look at all this feathers up shit. Brothers from Mississippi, Oklahoma, Tennessee, everybody's feathers up, everybody's Native American. Dog, he never took nobody back as slaves that was black from the Americas, what we call United States. He never set foot on United States, dog. How are you a Native American? You know, I used to be so biased. I used to think everybody that wasn't from Detroit was slow. Hey, these dudes go for anything. These dudes are slow. I'm asking my Aboriginal brothers from New York, from Virginia, because what they like to do is like to take those small isolated incidents and make it look like it happened everywhere. Like they'll show you the Plecker thing where Plecker was a man in Virginia and he changed the coding from the North American Indian from color to Negro. And they make it look like that happened in New Mexico and Washington and North Dakota. So I'm like, no, dog, that just happened right there in Virginia. That shit didn't happen everywhere. But I'm asking, what Dane is doing is he talks in generalities. But if you're from Mississippi, you think he's talking about you. He's not talking about you. He wasn't talking about you. Nobody, no North American Indian, to my knowledge, was ever taken in Europe. As a matter of fact, the first English settlement didn't come to the United States, I believe, 1607? The first English settlement was in Jamestown, Virginia in 1607. Then you got coming right behind it, 1620, the Pilgrims settled in Plymouth. This is in Massachusetts. So I'm trying to figure out, like, well, who is he talking about? Because he on the video portion, he says my ancestors. Our ancestors were taken to Europe in 1492 by Columbus. But I don't have no ancestors from the islands. I don't have no ancestors from South America. What is he talking about? See how you can kind of he's misled. You see how you can be misled if you're not really familiar with the information. It's easily to be misled. I'm trying to keep.
All right, guys. All right, so what I'm gonna go over now is I'm gonna go over the slave trade. All right. So this map right here is a map of Africa, South America, the Caribbean, and the United States. All right. So in my last video, I showed everyone a match that I had of my Zulu cousin. I know a lot of people don't really believe in DNA in the Aboriginal community, but I'm gonna show you on the map. All right. So you notice right here in the southeastern portion of Africa, that's where the Zulus are located at. There was a few slaves that were sent to Mozambique, and I'm guessing that's how I actually one of my ancestors were actually captured, maybe in war, and sent into the slave trade to America. All right. Um, so the next part, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go over some census records, because on the last video, a lot of people were asking to provide some documentation stating us African Americans actually came from Africa. They always been here in the United States. They haven't came to Africa. All right. Um, you got to understand that the slavery in America started in 1607. All right. The census records didn't start until 1790. All right. Until 1800, uh, African Americans were actually listed as just free people of color. So they weren't keeping records from pre pre-slavery, before the country. It was before America was actually a country, into now. All right. You got to realize that. And after slavery, the first census African Americans were actually on was the 1870 census. So that's the census I'm actually going to show you documentation on. All right, guys. So this right here is the 1870 census on my Stewart family. All right. So what you notice is residence, South Carolina, United States. Place of birth, Africa. Race, ethnicity is black. All right. Keep in mind, when I went over the census, 1870, that was the classification for colored people or Negro. All the different names that we have, but in 1870 is black, not Aboriginal. And birthplace, Africa. All right. Moving forward, I'm gonna show you another example. All right, this isn't mine. This is another person that wanted to provide extra proof that they have ancestry in Africa. This person, birthplace, Louisiana. Father's birthplace, Mississippi. Mother's birthplace, Africa. All right. So this is more prevalent than what Dane Calloway puts out there. And there's documentation out there everywhere. All right. Just because a person is labeled black, Negro, or colored, and whatever the case is, most 9 out of 10 times they're going to be from Africa. They're not from native to America or indigenous to America, unless you have tribal documents providing that information. They're 9 out of 10 times they're going to be African during slavery times. I'm not talking about in recent times where people came from Australia or from the Pacific Island or all the other places where people of color come from. I'm talking before slavery and during slavery times in the United States. Guys, so I'm going to go over what I self identify as. All right, so I self identify as multiracial. All right, I'm not going to say that I'm full Native American because I'm not. I'm not going to say I'm full African because I'm not. I'm multiracial, so I'm more than one thing. I'm a ton of different things, right? But what I will say is I have a documented ancestry going back hundreds of years with my indigenous ancestry. And what I noticed is with the Aboriginals, they have no documentation at all. When I asked for them to provide some documentation that their family ancestry is indigenous to America, that they never came from Africa, they can't provide me with anything. All right, and I can. And secondly, I hate that they deny their African heritage. Me being multiracial, I acknowledge all my ethnicities and all my ancestry on both sides. My dad being having indigenous ancestry, and my mother having ADOS ancestry. So it's to me it's crazy. I don't know who taught them to hate themselves and deny their heritage. All right. Moving forward, I'm gonna go over and show you the documentation backing my ancestry for my indigenous ancestry. Thanks. This is a list of the 1924 Baker roll of my family. All right. The Baker roll is the last roll for the Eastern Band Cherokee, which is the tribe that I'm enrolled in. All right. John Sherrill is my second great grandfather. He is listed as 3/4 Native American. All right. His wife, my second great grandmother, Molly Sherrill, is listed as full Native American. All right. And also listed is my great grandmother, Dina Sherrill, which is listed as 7/8 Native American. All right. Moving forward. All right. Molly Sherrill, applicant, father enrolled by Hesser's roll, 454, and Chapman roll. All right. So Molly has a documentation of her father rolls back into the 1830s. All right. Here's another document from the Indian Affairs. I believe this one is a 1906 Gunny Miller roll. All right. As you see, it lists English name Molly Sherrill. Also, it lists Indian name, residence where she stayed at. Also, town, post office. Are you married? Yes, to Don Sherrill. And then it also has father's name, Tramper, as well as his Indian name, English name. So what I'm showing you right now is a lot more than what any Aboriginal American actually shows has ever shown anyone. Man, I haven't seen any Aboriginal American show me any documentation, put them into any type of tribe at all, or any showing them that they had any ancestry prior to the 1800s or so in America. I haven't seen anything yet, but I'm actually going to show you some more. This document is the Gunny Miller roll, but it actually is of my third great grandfather, Andy Newt Sherrill, and his line of descent. All right. Andy Newt is the father of John Sherrill. What you'll notice on this one, it actually lists his family. Fallen Blossom. I actually have a photo of Fallen Blossom. He's listed right here. This is his Indian name. And then also Jenny is his sister, and his line of descent. His father was actually a European, and then on his mother's side he had indigenous ancestry. And you notice Big Bear. He's actually one of the chiefs in North Carolina in the history. He wrote in some famous. He signed some famous documents and treaties back in the late 1700s and early 1800s. He's the father of Chief Yunguska, aka Drowning Bear, the first chief of today's Eastern Band Cherokee, the tribe that I'm enrolled at today. And this is a document linking me back all the way to the 1700s because of this guy. And right here, it gives names of all children and residents living with him and dates of them at that time. So this is a great document, a find that I had found when I was doing my genealogy research on my family specifically. All right. Next slide. This is a photo of my third great grandfather's brother, Fallen Blossom. This photo was taken in 1888. And you notice here the old clothing that they wore, and that even back then the Cherokees were into today's society. They were more colonized than most tribes. So this is another document that I found uh, with my ancestor, Chief Big Bear. This talks about him purchasing land twice or sold land twice, and starting the Big Bear Reserve in North Carolina. Big Bear Yangua or Yana was a Cherokee chief who lived in the area of Bryson County, North Carolina. James Mooney wrote about him signing some treaties back in the day. But again, yeah, he was the father of Chief Yanguska, aka Drowning Bear, which I'm descended from on another line. But it was a good find to find a story behind my ancestor, as well as documentation linking myself to him, which Aboriginal people, I've yet to find anyone can actually do anything like this. All right, moving forward. All right, so I would like to conclude this video with a picture of one of my former enslaved ancestors, my fourth great grandmother. Her name is Betsy Madison. All right. For everyone, I want you guys to have a blessed day. Hope you learned something new. Hopefully, it was very informative, and I gave you some information. So, like, subscribe, share, and hit the bell icon. All right. Have a great day.
Who taught you, please? Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate? You should ask yourself, who